The official narrative of the Apollo program is a story of triumph, a testament to human ingenuity and courage. On July 20th, 1969, humanity collectively held its breath as Neil Armstrong took his first steps on the lunar surface. It was a moment that defined a generation, a symbol of victory in the Cold War's intense space race. Yet, in the decades since, a persistent question has echoed in the shadows of this monumental achievement. What if the giant leap for mankind was nothing more than a giant hoax? This is the secret truth of the Apollo program, a counter-narrative that suggests the moon landings were faked. The theory posits that the United States, desperate to beat the Soviet Union, staged the entire event. The political pressure to fulfill President John F. Kennedy's 1961 promise was immense. Failure was not an option, but the technological hurdles seemed insurmountable at the time. Opponents of the hoax theory argue that the government orchestrated the deception in a secret film studio. They point to numerous anomalies in the official photographic and video evidence from the missions. One of the most famous points of contention is the American flag planted on the moon's surface. In the vacuum of space, critics ask, why does the flag appear to wave as if caught in a breeze? NASA explains this was due to the flag being unfurled from its casing and the momentum of the astronauts handling it. Another major piece of supposed evidence lies in the photographs themselves, the complete absence of stars. The lunar sky, without an atmosphere to obscure them, should have been filled with brilliant stars. The official explanation is that the camera's exposure was set for the brightly lit lunar surface, making the faint stars invisible. Shadows in the Apollo photographs also raise questions for conspiracy theorists. Shadows cast by the astronauts and equipment are not parallel, suggesting multiple light sources. This, they claim, points to the use of studio lighting rather than a single, distant, deep down. NASA counters that the uneven lunar landscape and reflections from the surface created these complex shadow patterns. The crosshairs, used for measurement, sometimes appear behind objects in the photos. This suggests the crosshairs were part of a composite image, not etched into the camera's lens plate. The space agency attributes this to overexposure on the bright objects, which bleeds over the thin crosshair lines. Furthermore, some backgrounds in photos taken miles apart appear to be identical. Theorists argue this proves the use of a painted backdrop in a studio. Scientists explain this is a trick of perspective caused by the lack of atmosphere on the moon, making distant objects appear closer. The Lunar Excursion Module, or LEM, is another source of suspicion. It landed on the moon's surface, yet left no visible blast crater beneath its powerful rocket engine. How could a 10,000-pound thrust engine not displace a significant amount of lunar dust? NASA's response is that the engine was throttled back significantly before landing, and the lunar soil is dense and compact. The very survival of the astronauts is questioned, specifically regarding the Van Allen radiation belts. These belts of intense radiation surround the Earth and are considered lethal to humans. Critics argue that the technology of the 1960s could not have provided sufficient shielding. The official account states the spacecraft traveled through the belts quickly and on a trajectory that avoided the most intense areas. The loss of the original slow-scan television tapes of the Apollo 11 landing is also highly suspicious to many. NASA admitted in 2006 that it had erased the tapes and reused them to save money. This explanation seems implausible for such a historically significant recording. Theorists believe the tapes were destroyed to hide evidence of the fakery. Another dark chapter involves the mysterious deaths of several astronauts and NASA personnel. Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger Chaffee perished in a fire during a launch rehearsal for Apollo 1. Some believe these men were about to expose the conspiracy and were silenced. The sheer number of people required to maintain such a secret for decades seems impossible to many. Over 400,000 people worked on the Apollo project, a vast network of scientists, engineers, and technicians. Would not a single person have come forward with concrete evidence of the fraud? Furthermore, the Soviet Union, with its own advanced space tracking capabilities, never cried foul. Their silence is perhaps the most compelling evidence that the landings were genuine. They had every political motivation to expose an American deception. The physical evidence brought back from the moon is also substantial. Apollo missions returned with 382 kilograms of lunar rocks, dust, and soil. These samples have been studied by thousands of scientists worldwide. Their composition is unlike any terrestrial rocks, showing evidence of formation in a vacuum with no water. No hoax could convincingly replicate these unique geological properties on such a large scale. Additionally, retroreflectors were placed on the lunar surface by Apollo astronauts. Observatories on Earth can, to this day, bounce lasers off these reflectors to measure the moon's distance. This provides a tangible, ongoing experiment that confirms our presence there. Despite this evidence, the belief in the moon landing hoax persists. It speaks to a deep-seated distrust of government and official narratives. The theory thrives in an era where information and misinformation can spread instantly. It offers a more exciting, clandestine version of history. The idea that we were deceived on such a grand scale is a powerful and compelling thought. The debate itself has become a cultural phenomenon. It forces us to question what we accept as truth and why. Was the Apollo program a marvel of engineering or a masterpiece of deception? The evidence overwhelmingly supports the conclusion that we did, in fact, go to the moon. The science is sound, the testimonies are consistent, and the physical proof is verifiable. Yet, the secret truth for some is not written in the history books or scientific journals. It lives in the anomalies, the unanswered questions, and the lingering shadows of doubt. The story of Apollo is not just one story, but two. One is a tale of humanity's greatest achievement. The other is a tale of its most audacious deception. The truth, as they say, may be out there. But perhaps the real secret is not whether we went to the moon. Perhaps the secret is why, after all these years, we still feel the need to ask the question. The Cold War context cannot be overstated in this narrative. National pride and technological supremacy were on the line. America needed a decisive, unassailable win. This desperation, theorists claim, was the motive for the grand deception. They suggest the entire program was a piece of political theater. The astronauts, in this version, were not explorers but actors. Their lines were scripted, their movements choreographed. The lunar surface was a set, meticulously crafted by Hollywood artisans. Fine gray dust was used to simulate the regolith. Powerful wires lifted the astronauts to simulate lunar gravity. This would explain the bouncy, slow-motion gait. The lack of a blast crater is explained away if the LEM was simply lowered by a crane. Every photograph was carefully composed and vetted. Any imperfections that slipped through are the clues theorists seize upon. The sheer audacity of such a lie is what makes it so compelling. But each anomaly has a scientific, rational explanation. The waving flag's motion is simple inertia in a frictionless environment. The starless sky is a basic principle of photography. The non-parallel shadows are a trick of perspective on an undulating surface. The Van Allen belts were a known danger, planned for and mitigated. The spacecraft's hull provided the necessary shielding for the quick passage. The missing tapes were a result of bureaucratic oversight, not conspiracy. The restored broadcast footage, taken from other sources, still documents the event. Deaths of astronauts, while tragic, were not statistically abnormal for the high-risk field of test pilots. The idea of a silent conspiracy of 400,000 people defies human nature. The lunar rocks remain the most solid, tangible proof. They have been independently verified by international rivals. The laser reflectors are a continuing, undeniable link to the missions. So why does the doubt remain so potent? It is a story about the fallibility of our own perceptions. It reflects a modern cynicism towards grand, unifying achievements. The moon landing was perhaps the last time the world truly watched together. To believe it was a lie is to reframe that unity as a shared delusion. The secret truth, then, is a choice of narratives. Do you choose the story of incredible human achievement, or the story of an impossibly complex, perfectly executed lie? The answer lies not in the shadows of the moon. It lies within our own willingness to believe. The silence of the lunar surface holds no answers. The echoes of the debate, however, continue to resonate on Earth. Each generation rediscovers the conspiracy. They find the same grainy videos and puzzling photos online. The questions feel new to them, urgent and revelatory. This cycle ensures the secret truth never truly fades. It becomes a rite of passage for the skeptical mind. The official account is one of physics, engineering, and courage. The counter-narrative is one of psychology, politics, and deception. Both are compelling stories about the limits of human endeavor. One pushes the limits of our physical world. The other explores the limits of our trust. The legacy of Apollo is therefore dual-faceted. It is a source of immense pride and inspiration. It is also a source of endless suspicion and debate. The truth is not a simple fact, but a complex tapestry. It is woven from light and shadow, fact and fiction. The secret of the Apollo program is that its story is still being written. It is written not by historians, but by every person who looks up at the moon and wonders. The mission's radio silence during its orbit around the far side of the moon was a source of great tension. For those minutes, the crew was utterly alone, the most isolated humans in history. Theorists sometimes use this gap in communication as a window where a faked transmission could be prepared. The quality of the television broadcast itself was remarkably poor, even for the time. This, critics say, was intentional to obscure imperfections in the studio set. NASA contends it was the best that could be achieved with a camera that had to be lightweight and survive lunar conditions. The rocks brought back were also claimed by some to be from Antarctica, which has unique meteorites. However, the lunar rocks lack the weathering from Earth's atmosphere and show micrometeorite pits. The final decision to believe or not rests with the individual. It is a testament to the power of a good story. The secret truth of the Apollo program is that its greatest legacy might be the questions it inspires.